From brand new Dragonflight dialogue, we learned that 4 so-called elemental elders had battled Neltharion ages ago, and they were apparently defeated by his so-called trickery, probably hinting at his old god-infused powers. From these dialogues, we just learned that the Djaradin are elemental in nature, that these so-called elders were so insanely powerful that they almost eliminated the dragons, and as we know for a fact, 4 elemental lords actually exist. We also learned that they're apparently slumbering somewhere underground and that they seek to awaken them, and we also know that the Djaradin had made a so-called magma pact with Iridikron, who just by chance also awakened. So who are these 4 mysterious elders, and are we going to see the return of the actual elemental lords in Dragonflight? Other than Cataclysm, Dragonflight is essentially the elemental expansion, and really, it is only natural that we would see elemental lords to some extent if all we're talking about is elementals. I'd go as far as to argue that Dragonflight is a lot more elemental than Cataclysm, despite the fact that we literally ventured into the elemental plane, and that is because I feel like something like this might be happening quite soon. Maybe we're not going to go to Deepholm, but another similar realm is definitely and highly possible. We constantly have this proto-dragons or elemental storyline, we have the primalists trying to get back to the old elemental ways of Azeroth, and we also have this entire possibility of Azeroth being a world soul that is actually elemental in nature, which makes so much sense when you think about it. As far as we know, the elementals and the elemental lords are the only true native beings to a planet, and how chaotic or peaceful they are really depends on what a world soul is like, which definitely means there is some sort of a connection between these beings, these manifestations, and Azeroth. Now, at the same time, we have the storylines of how the Black Empire came and enslaved them and forced them to fight for them, and then we have the storyline of how the Titans came in and they defeated them and further enslaved them and then just sealed them in a pocket realm known as the Elemental Plane. I think we're pretty safe to say that the Elemental Lords and the Elementals in general really are victims in this entire matter. They're just getting wrecked by these invading forces, even though they are quite chaotic themselves, like don't get me wrong. The Elemental, as far as we know, are not these peaceful, ancient, wise and old, but instead they're powerful native figures to Azeroth that constantly fight and have a really strong will to dominate. Now that brings us to the topic of this video and the most relevant thing that we just learned, and the first really strong clue that we got, there is a significant amount of Djaradin dialogue that not only hints at possible 10.1 content and the fact that we're going underground, but it also talks about the origin, their ancient alliance with Iridikron, and how they were defeated by Neltharion in the ages past. As far as we know, Djaradin are native beings, as they just literally told us. They are actually elementals, and they are sworn enemies of dragons, and not just the Titan dragons, but like dragons in general. It's only that the Titan dragons became a lot bigger of a nuisance to them, as they couldn't actually fight against them. However, Djaradin are literally the dragon killer, the dragon hunter race. Tarjin, the blind, tells us how long ago Outsider Vikel came to the Dragon Isles and how they battled them, but more importantly, he tells us his own origin as a race. In regards to how they're so proficient in building earth and fire, he says, "Ignorant fools, the Djaradin command the earth and fire because we are the earth and fire." It is said that the Djaradin were the first earth giants to walk the surface of Azeroth, shaping earth and mountains. They formed this land with their fists. Now, before we go further, it is important to note that a lot of the giants that you're all familiar with, that you know of, are actually Titan creations and are in turn Titan forged, and they also shape the lands and the mountains with their fists, as you would say. But this distinctly mentions that these guys are the so-called first giants. Seeing how we have the original dragons and the Titan dragons, I would almost certainly say that this is the same thing. Proto-dragons, dragons, giants, Djaradin. So this entire contrast between the native and the Titan enhanced natives. Now, the most interesting thing this guy says is this. According to legend, 4 elders of those ancient Djaradin joined their powers together to burrow deep inside the earth. The legends do not agree what happened down there, but they all end the same way. The elders emerged, touched by the fires of the world to be true Djaradin, commanding full control over fire and earth. In turn, the elders empowered all Djaradin into the mighty giants you see today. this, in my opinion, is a really huge hint, but before we dissect this further, let us examine a few more mentions, as this adds a lot more context, and Djaradin even warns us to not listen to this tale, as we might start hating dragons that are our actual allies. Now, I'm not going to read every quote, it would take a long time, so to cut a long story short, he kinda says something like this. For Djaradin elders, mastery over earth and fire caught the dragons off guard, and they were winning until Neltharion emerged with his armies. Despite the fact that the dragons outnumbered them, these 4 elemental lords were still winning, but the Earth Warder came out with some trickery that banished them. He apparently didn't kill these elders, but instead they retreated deep into the earth to go into a so-called slumber. Now, this is a huge hint for further story development. This trickery is almost certainly the same old god powers that Deathwing had used against Razaget later down the line, as we had seen in that cinematic. However, who could these 4 elders, the so-called elders, actually be? They're only mentioned as elders, but are they really Djaradin? Some would say we have 4 old gods, but honestly I don't think that is the case. However, what we also have is 4 elemental lords of water, fire, earth, and air. What is really important to know that, by the way the event's chronological work, this war seems to have happened prior to the massive primalist incarnate war against the dragon aspects that we're constantly talking about in the recent times. The reason I say this is because we have further dialogues that talks about the so-called Magma Pact, which is in regards to this big incarnate war. Apparently, the united Djaradin, after they lost the elders, were no match for the power that they had under the so-called 4 elders, and they kept just constantly losing and losing ground against the dragons. So suddenly, the incarnate of Earth itself came down, known as Iridikron, and offered them a pact and alliance. Despite the fact that the Djaradin hated dragons with a passion, they still agreed because, as they said in their own words, if there are to be dragons flying overhead, let it be the ones infused with the same earth and fire that burns within us. This confirms to us that after the defeat of the elders, the Djaradin had allied with Iridikron, and possibly even the old gods, if really that was the force that worked with Iridikron. What is really important to know though are the current events, as we learn that they're actively searching for these elders and looking to awaken them from a 20,000-year-old plus slumber. So, with all the current hints that we have, who could these mysterious elders actually be? While it would be interesting, a really good theory to say that these could be the old gods, because there are 4 of them that were confirmed, but that would essentially be impossible as they were imprisoned for a really long time, and if they broke free in this war against Neltharion, we would know, as you know, this would be a really major event. However, was it likely that the 4 elemental lords managed to break free from their prison at some point in time and were wreaking havoc across Azeroth until Neltharion defeated them and just banished them underground? I think that could definitely be a likely possibility. Another possibility is that these could just be brand new figures, brand new characters, but they might be some sort of elemental lords that were subservient to the true ones but were related to them. So maybe this was not Ragnaros and Terrazane, but a few of them below in the hierarchy. The reason I mention just these 2 is that Djaradin talk about how they're made of fire and earth, but they obviously don't talk about air and water, so adding Neptulon and Alakir to this entire story would be kinda strange if they're just fire and earth. So it is possible that these 4 Djaradin elders may in fact be some new elemental lords that will soon awaken. In fact, I think this is the highest possibility because we did actually run across these other elemental lords and even defeated some of them like Ragnaros, and they were in fact not slumbering underneath the Dragon Isles. Seeing that the Dragon Isles were in stasis, it is also possible that the Djaradin did not know this, but honestly I think these elders are actually Djaradin related elemental lord lieutenants that might ultimately lead into further story development that might involve the actual elemental lords that all of us are familiar with. This might be happening as soon as 10.1 with all these underground hints. Elemental lord is insanely likely, I'd say the most likely possibility, as Dragonflight is all about it, but this could further segue into Titan and Old God lore because, as we know, the elementals were heavily influenced by these 2 major cosmological forces. Thank you for watching. Check out what's imprisoning so give us a mistake by clicking on the screen, and check out Doron's Academy for videos on real world history. See you next time.